worship. If you're a visitor with us this morning, we've got in our announcement sheet a prayer request card. If you have come with prayers in mind today that you'd like to fill out, we'll be sure that is included in prayers and with our prayer teams. So glad you're here, and hope you have come expecting an experience of the living God with us in worship this morning. So welcome everyone. A couple of announcements to share this morning. If you have been by the structure, the new building that's going up, if you've driven by that recently and you can see the steel beams are still coming out of concrete and the steel roofing, and in a recent conversation with Matt Gunderson from Superior Schools, they've re-looked and recalculated the timeline, and probably you've already guessed they're going to need some more time. They're going to need some more time. So that's going to be a couple of months. That timeline is just pushed back a little bit, several months. And so we continue doing what we do, and their partnership and care for the church is just as strong as ever. We just keep moving down that road. So I wanted to share that with you. And also, most of you are well aware that the Boland family is going to be moving to Nashville soon. And that means that we'll need to fill our role of parish secretary. So I want you to know that that job is posted on Indeed.com. The council might work on that job description, and if you want to check that out, if you're interested, or you know somebody who might be, know that is posted, and we're starting to look further into that at this time. So let's continue with worship. Please rise. Merciful God, forgive us. Our will is so often tied sin, and we cannot break free. We have spoken when we needed to have quiet. We were silent when we needed to have said something. We acted when we knew better. We were still when we knew to have moved. For the wrong we have done, for the good we have failed to do, have mercy on us. Through Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen. People of God, look to the Son given to heal you, forgive you, and set you free because God loved the world so much. Amen. The peace of the Lord be with you always. Share the Lord's peace with your neighbor. Facebook friends who are watching a worship this morning. Ken tells me Jack is worshiping, watching on Facebook this morning. So good morning, everybody. Say hi to Jack. I miss you, and so glad that you're online. And I believe Don and Charlotte are probably online this morning. So it's a flat entrance. When you're up to it, you can get in. We'll look forward to seeing you. And Dan and Don and Ronaldo might also be watching online. And if you are so glad that the Facebook opportunity online streaming, thanks for doing that, Deacon Darlene, this morning again. Deb's been doing that. Can help to bring you into worship when you're unable to be here. So no, we're thinking about you. We send you love from your church family, and glad for the online streaming opportunity on Facebook this morning. So hi everybody. Morning. Hi. Good to see all of you this morning. So I have a question for you. Like when something tough happens, something tough, like frustrating, or just something tough in your day, or like you just kind of get about something in your day. What do you do to help that, or like to make that better? What's something that you do? Like, do you talk to somebody about it? Not talk to mom and dad?
Maybe throw something.
Maybe throw something? Maybe throw something. So, or do you tell somebody close, like a cousin or a sister? You might tell a friend, grandma, a sister. I hear a shout out for grandma. Who talks to grandma? So there might be some interesting conversations on the way home. But when tough stuff happens, we need to know what to do about it, right? Because sometimes there's just stuff that doesn't go the way we want it to go during our day. So one of those things we can do, sometimes you might go out and play, go out and get some fresh air and think about it and walk and talk and run. No. Okay, so that's always an option. Always an option to get out into the fresh air.
Kick the ball real hard.
Kick the ball real hard, right? So like let those aggressions get out. Another way that we're talking about in our scriptures is this way, and that is to be kind to yourself. Isn't it awesome that they made a granola bar named Kind? How cool is that? So to remember what we're talking about today is to remember that when something just doesn't go the way you had in mind, or you're frustrated, is the first thing you can do is be kind to yourself about it. Is to take a deep breath. Remember that Jesus' love is with you always. And how can you step back and be nice to yourself? Be kind to yourself. It's called self-compassion. That's the big word we're talking about today. And to remember that maybe you're a little hungry too. And remember that Jesus is with you. Have a good snack. Take a deep breath and be really kind and nice to yourself, and maybe nice to the person next to you. Because that starts to just diffuse. It starts to just melt away some of that toughness, so you can come back and help make it better. Let's have a prayer about that. The Lord be with you. Oh, good and gracious God, remind us when things get tough, you are so with us. You love us and you are present, and you call us to be with you too. And one of those ways we can do that is just to be kind to ourselves, and to know that you love us and you are with us always. When things are going great and when things are tough, let us remember that you are there. Watch over these, your beautiful children this week, that they know you love them and they can be kind to themselves and to others. In your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen. Amen. Thanks for coming today. See you next week. We continue with the first reading.
A reading from Romans 4:13-25. The promise that he would inherit the world did not come to Abraham or his descendants through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. If it is the adherents of the law who are to be the heirs, faith is null and void, and the promise is void. For the law brings wrath, but where there is no law, neither is there violation. For this reason it depends on faith, in order that the promise may rest on grace and be guaranteed to all his descendants, not only to the adherents of the law, but also to those who share the faith of Abraham. For he is the father of us all, as it is written, I have made you the father of many nations. In the presence of the God in whom he believed, who gives life to the dead and calls into existence the things that do not exist, hoping against hope, he believed that he would become the father of many nations, according to what was said, so numerous shall your descendants be. He did not weaken in faith when he considered his own body, which was already as good as dead, for he was about 100 years old, or when he considered the barrenness of Sarah's womb. No distrust made him waver concerning the promise of God, but he grew strong in his faith as he gave glory to God, being fully convinced that God was able to do what he had promised. Therefore his faith was reckoned to him as righteousness. Now the words, it was reckoned to him, were written not for his sake alone, but for ours also. It will be reckoned to us who believe in him who raised Jesus our Lord from the dead, who was handed over to death for our trespasses and was raised for our justification. Word of God, word of life.
Thanks be to God.
He rebuked Peter and said, Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and to forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of the Father with the holy angels. The word of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You may be seated. Grace and peace to you from God our Creator and from our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Continuing in Lent 2018 and our study series on Wednesday nights is from the book, The Gifts of Imperfection by Dr. Maureen Brown. Really great to keep reading through it. It continues to interweave faith and prayer and spiritual life with wholehearted life, the wholehearted living. So again, this book, and folks, Reverend Jim and Marjorie Neal are facilitating this study, and a good time was had by all, right? You found it meaningful?
It was very good.
Very meaningful. That's what I understand. And most everybody came at 4:30, so they'll just be the 4:30 Wednesday night to be followed by a meal afterwards, and they're provided by our young people and their families, and donations will help them to get to the youth gathering, which is only a few months away in Houston. Jesus sets Peter straight. So let's take a look at our gospel lesson this morning. And you probably heard the really strong words that Jesus said to Peter when Peter came up to Jesus afterward. You know, Jesus has said these things are going to happen to him. This mission is going to include, it will have great suffering, and he will be killed and he will raise again. And so Peter heard these words, and I just really take compassion on Peter, because I think he just didn't want to see the Lord suffer. But boy, Jesus really set Peter straight. Get behind me, Satan, he says. And actually, if you go back to the Greek, what the Greek text actually says, that Jesus says, is shut up. That's what he says. So Jesus is like so clear that Peter, like, you're getting in my face, you're getting in my way, I need to set you aside, because this is going to be a part of the mission. And you're either on the mission or, don't pull me aside. Don't deter me from sharing that the kingdom of God is near, repent, and what that whole law is going to contain. So Jesus really sets Peter straight. And then Jesus sets us straight. What does it mean to follow Jesus? It means to deny yourself, take up your cross, and to follow me, Jesus says. Now remember, Mark's gospel is being preached to the post-resurrection community, the closest community to the resurrection. And so they have this memory of the experience with Jesus. And so taking up your cross in the culture in that day to which Mark was written actually meant religious persecution. It really did, because that's what was happening in that day, because following Jesus was still putting your life on the line. And some of us certainly have known that, but a lot of us haven't known what it takes when your life is really on the line because you're a Christian and you're following Jesus. So that was a whole part of the understanding that Mark was talking about and writing to that community at that time. Ever since then, it's kind of evolved. It might evolve to mean a bunch of different things depending on who's preaching it. But I want to get back to the part of denying yourself and how that connects with our Lenten theme about living a wholehearted life. And this week is about cultivating compassion, which means letting go of being perfectionism, letting go of that. So what does that mean? Denying yourself this way would mean not being so self-focused. We human beings so easily get all wrapped up in ourselves. And you'll remember me saying how Luther talks about that as navel-gazing, when we turn inward so much on ourselves. Luther's definition of sin was navel-gazing. Well, so to deny ourselves would be to deny that, so we start to break free of that and start to have eyes and develop eyes for others, which is what Jesus' mission and ministry was all about. Community, having eyes for others, your neighbor, relieving the suffering and watching out and changing things for those who are oppressed. The Bible always speaks out on the side of those who are oppressed. So remember, this is like denying yourself, breaking free of that self-centeredness so that we can begin to have eyes for others. If you've ever taken any conflict resolution training, then you probably learned how important it is to take second position. And second position is to say, you step back and can you walk in somebody else's shoes? Can you actually see something from their point of view? Can you set down your own argument, so to speak, and actually start understanding through someone else's eyes? Not easy to do, to take second position. But that's what this is talking about. Setting that down and being able to start walking a mile in somebody else's shoes. And getting overcoming perfectionism is one of those things. Why? Because if we focus on perfectionism, that outside look of perfection, then we've actually separated and isolated ourselves because of what's going on, where our focus is. So let me give you an example. This came up Saturday night in our worship service, a good example. By the way, these definitions might have changed over the decades with some of this formative work that Marie Brown has done. And so what may have been perfectionism 30 or 40 years ago, which was just being the best at your craft, whatever that was, has kind of taken on new psychological meaning. So I also want to preface that to keep that clear. So looking at that, changing that up to pursuing excellence, healthy achieving, and healthy striving. So an example of that perfectionism might be, one time we had ministry that we were doing in a pretty lovely area, pretty middle to affluent area, and the grounds were all pristine and well kept, and the cars in the driveway were like the newest cars, and the homes were beautiful, and the trees were beautiful, and the people were lovely, and the people were beautiful. And then we knock on the door and get to know the people beyond that, and it was so striking to us that there were those that inside their homes were so sparsely furnished. There was hardly anybody home, if you will. So there was such a difference between the exterior and how that looked and the interior where people were actually carrying out their daily lives. That's some of what a good example of perfectionism is. You're so concerned about exterior, external, outside appearances, but we're not tending and taking care to internal realities. And what that does is just weakens us, and it just separates us then from that fuller, balanced experience of life in Jesus in our midst. So some language that reformats that or reframes that for us today is pursuing excellence, or high achieving, or high striving, healthy striving. So a show of hands, if you don't mind, from all of the overachievers in our group this morning. Where's all the overachievers? Come on, I'm not the only one. And I think there's probably more than 6 of you hiding out. There's not any more down there? Okay. So overachievers, it's not necessarily a tough or bad thing. If you put all your gifts into motion, and it's maybe been a lot of fun, all the extra studying, all the extra developing, seeing what could happen. We're not talking about that at all. It's about that gap, that separation, that gap that keeps us from living as a fully integrated life if we're practicing outward appearances. Somebody on the way out of the last service told me there's a show on TV called something about appearances, keeping up appearances. Does that sound familiar to somebody? There's some show that's actually about that, which would really fit in today's theme. So how do we overcome that? Here's some really good suggestions. Beyond perfectionism involves cultivating self-compassion, what I started talking with the young people about. Cultivating self-compassion. I had such a good time looking at this website given by the author in her book called selfcompassion.org. And I've got a handout for you so that you might be able to go online too and take a look at that. Selfcompassion.org. So when you go there, one of the things you'll find is an opportunity to even take an assessment, a self-assessment about your level of compassion towards yourself. How's that for overachievers? Isn't it awesome? So awesome. You can go online and do that. Selfcompassion.org. Here's a few of the exercises that she points out. Let's especially look at number 4. Setting up a ring of circles where you've got 3 circles and you put like a name tag on the chairs, and you have the criticizer, the criticized, and the compassionate observer. And then whatever that internal conversation you're having, imagine that from each one of those perspectives. And see if that starts to just ring some bells and bring some insight to you. And that, once we become aware of those things, that helps us to move through and beyond them to greater self-compassion, which ultimately is going to bring things back in balance and help us develop eyes for others as well. So I hope you enjoyed looking through that website as much as I did. Here's to take a look at the three things she talks about, this author. Self-kindness, being kind to yourself, realizing our common humanity, having those eyes for others, noticing that we have so much more in common that joins us than we do that separates us. And a mindfulness of taking a balanced approach. That, yep, things get tough, things get wonderful, and how do we keep all of that in balance and remember that Jesus is present with us in the whole mix of things. So being mindful and taking a balanced approach is something I want to talk a little bit more about. And I have an illustration that I want to use to do that.